Wow. I'm thrilled to be with you, especially to honor my shero, Hillary Rodham Clinton. Beginning with her groundbreaking commencement speech at Wellesley College, to her work as a young lawyer with the Children's Defense Fund, and in her earliest years of public service in Arkansas and on the national stage, Hillary has been an advocate for all of us, especially those on the margins and struggling and vulnerable. Above all, she has been a partner in our fight for equality, making our community's battle her own. As senator, she steadfastly helped defeat the federal marriage amendment and ensured our Constitution would never be amended to deny rights to us and to others. She fought for the passage of non-discrimination protections and for the expansion of hate crimes and for the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell and DOMA. As Secretary of State, she made the inclusion of LGBT rights a top priority of American foreign policy. We will never forget her bold declaration heard around the world that gay rights are human rights and human rights are gay rights. Yes. I've just finished reading her book. It's called What Happened? If you haven't read it, you should. It will be very clear she is not done yet. She always brings all of herself to everything she does. She continues to show us we all need to resist, insist, persist, enlist. We need to move onward together. She has the heart of a champion, unlimited compassion for others, and the confidence to be her authentic self. Please join me tonight with all the love we can give to welcome our friend, our trailblazer, our champion, our own, very own, Hillary Rodham Clinton. Thank you so much. Thank you, HRC, for that warm welcome. And you know, there is no one I'd rather share my initials with than you. Thank you. Now, some of you may have seen as I came up the stairs that I've got one of those boots on because I fractured my foot. And yes, it's going to be for a couple more weeks. But when something like this happens, here's what your doctor says. Your doctor says rice. Rest, right? Ice, compress and elevate. And don't do anything else. I said, well, that's all fine and good. But in addition to rice, I have HRC that I have to be at.
I can't imagine missing this extraordinary event, and I'm told that it's the biggest one ever, and we need it to be. I want to thank my dear friend Billie Jean King, a champion for equal pay, greater opportunities for women and all people. And it's wonderful to see a lot of familiar faces here tonight, including Sarah McBride and Khizr Khan. They both spoke so eloquently at the Democratic National Convention last year. They embody America and our values at our best. Now, being here does feel a little bit like a family reunion. And that's, for me, in large measure, because I am so grateful for the support I've received from so many of you and the LGBT community over the years. You've made me, well, thank you. It's mutual. It is. I think it's fair to say you've made me a better First Lady, a better Senator, a better Secretary of State, a better presidential nominee, a better person. You embraced me and my family, and everywhere I went on the campaign trail, I not only saw those blue and yellow T-shirts out in force, but I heard your stories. You know, the man in Iowa who couldn't wait to tell me about the daughter he adopted years ago with his partner, the first in the state, he thought, and the granddaughter who is now the light of his life. The mother of a transgender girl in Las Vegas who stayed awake nights worrying about how her daughter would get the medical care she needed. LGBT veterans, teachers, doctors, nurses, business owners who were so determined to keep their promise to the next generation that, yes, it gets better. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for your courage, your tireless efforts, your enthusiasm and energy. Thank you for your commitment to building an America that's fairer, kinder, more compassionate, and yes, equal. Now, you know, since the election, one of the most common questions people have asked me is, how did you even get out of bed? Yes, I'll be honest, there were times when it was tempting just to pull the covers up over my head. But instead, I spent time with family and friends. I watched a lot of HGTV and went into my own frenzy of organizing closets and drawers in our house. Played with our two sweet dogs, did some yoga, including a technique called alternate nostril breathing, which I highly recommend. And yes, I also had my fair share of Chardonnay. I detail all this in my book, What Happened, because everybody gets knocked down, right? And we need to share our best experiences and how we all get back up. So these days, as a person, I'm okay, but as an American, I am really concerned. I'm concerned about what the future holds for our country and for so many Americans. You know, it fills me with joy to think about all the friends and people I've met over the years who can now marry, raise a family, serve their country, live proudly and openly in ways that once seemed unimaginable. But it makes my heart sink to know that so much of the progress we worked for, celebrated, maybe even started a little bit to take for granted, is nowhere near as secure as we'd hoped. That's where each of you and the Human Rights Campaign comes in. HRC has always stood for progress, for a future that is better than the past. You've changed hearts, minds, and laws. You've learned from devastating losses and come back twice as strong to celebrate historic wins. You're on the front lines of the fight for full equality for LGBT Americans and all Americans. So to paraphrase a song I love, Rachel Platten's fight song, I hope you've still got a lot of fight left in you. Because we have some tough battles ahead. For starters, there's the battle for affordable health care. Every time Congress and this administration try to repeal the Affordable Care Act, they're not just trying to rip away health care from millions of people, they're trying to roll back the law that made it illegal for insurance companies to deny coverage because of sexual orientation or gender identity. Not only that, by gutting funding for HIV and AIDS research, they are threatening to undo decades of our progress toward an AIDS-free generation. I will never forget the palpable feelings of pain and loss on the National Mall that day when Bill and I viewed the AIDS quilt for the first time, or the determination of AIDS activists that I met from Los Angeles to New York who were literally fighting for their lives and reminding us that silence equals death. We cannot and will not go back to those days. And pay attention, my friends, because embedded in this horrible, irresponsible, cruel, and mean-spirited giveaway to the richest of Americans called tax reform is a $500 billion cut in Medicare and a $1 trillion cut in Medicaid. That is exactly the appropriate response. But don't boo. Call the Congress and tell them you will not stand for that. Right now, we're also facing a battle to protect the rights of transgender Americans. Now, like you, I was just shocked when the administration rolled back protections for transgender students. They're also rolling them back for students with disabilities and so many other advances to protect those who are vulnerable. I couldn't stop picturing the faces of the children and teenagers that I've met who bravely spoke out about bullying and harassment that they faced at school, and the families who were so desperate to help and protect them. I was outraged when I read on Twitter of all places, that the president wanted to ban transgender people from serving in the military. You know, and he knows, transgender people have fought and died for this country from our very beginning. They are serving in uniform with distinction right now. And the suggestion that transgender Americans are unfit to serve is insulting and wrong. After all, having the world's best military doesn't just mean having the best trained forces or the biggest arsenal. It means standing up for our values. And around the world, hundreds of millions of people live in places where they can be arrested, even executed for being gay. The accounts from Chechnya are terrifying, with more than 100 gay and bisexual men being taken from their homes and families and detained in secret prisons. Just last month, 6 men were arrested for promoting sexual deviancy after waving a pride flag at a concert in Cairo, Egypt. Incidents like these should really alarm every American. And so should the fact that just a few weeks ago, the United States actually voted against a UN Security Council resolution to condemn the use of the death penalty as punishment for consensual same-sex relationships. When I saw that, I thought maybe I had read it wrong, that maybe I'd somehow got a double negative mixed up in there. But no, that's exactly what our country voted against, a resolution to condemn the use of the death penalty for consensual same-sex relationships. Now, after an outcry from the Human Rights Campaign and many others, the State Department attempted to clarify their position. But the fact remains, the United States shouldn't be shirking our responsibility to defend the human rights of LGBT people around the globe. We should be leading that fight. It's why I went to Geneva to shine a light on human rights abuses. It's why I called on heads of state to stop the persecution of innocent people. And I announced the first U.S. government strategy dedicated to combating human rights abuses against LGBT people abroad. And as I said that day, and as I believe more fiercely than ever now, gay rights are human rights, and human rights are gay rights. Now, you know, these attacks on the LGBT community here at home and around the world are striking and scary. Now, while I can only imagine what it's like to be in the position that so many people still find themselves in our country. You know, people who can't afford to come to this great dinner and who look so terrific in their fancy, beautiful outfits, because they live somewhere in America where they're still afraid to be who they are and to love who they love. So I cannot pretend to understand what that feels like, but I do know what it feels like to be torn down and attacked, and I want you to know I'm with you. Today, tomorrow, for the long haul. I won't be silenced, and I hope you won't be either. And you know what? That's a promise from one HRC to another. But you know, there is good news. There is good news. Even in these perilous times, we are seeing glimmers of hope in the wave of grassroots activism across America. I started this new organization called Onward Together. I want to encourage more people to get involved, to lead, to run for office. Even Will and Grace are calling their members of Congress, for heaven's sake. But we can't stop there. We have to stay engaged at every level. It is just wrong that in 2017 you can lose your job, lose your home, or if this administration gets its way, be denied a wedding cake simply because of who you are or who you love. And the laws that we've seen in places like North Carolina and Mississippi that would give states and businesses a license to discriminate underscore how urgent this is. We can't rely on this administration or the Supreme Court to uphold LGBT rights. We need to be agitating to pass the Equality Act to guarantee full federal equality for the LGBT community. When people in positions of power try to curry favor from groups that embrace dangerous practices like so-called conversion therapy, or make cruel jokes that strike fear into the hearts of this community, it sends an unmistakable message to lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender Americans: you don't matter. You're not welcome. And when the Republican Senate candidate in Alabama supports the idea that homosexuality should be criminalized and refuses to say whether or not he thinks LGBT people should be executed, Americans of every party, of any decency, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, should line up and condemn him and those views. And that includes the President, the Senate Majority Leader, the Speaker of the House, and every single elected official who endorses a candidate with those views should be held accountable. Now, there's an old Mexican proverb that says, "Tell me with whom you walk, and I will show you who you are." Whether or not we are willing to accept this kind of bigotry and hatred speaks volumes about who we are as a country. But you know, all of the words that I can use, all of the wonderful, enthusiastic applause that you can give me, none of it matters if you do not get out to vote in every election, not just the presidential ones. Because at all levels of government, we have to work to elect candidates who will not only say the right things, but do the right things, who will stand up not only for LGBT rights, but the rights of immigrants and refugees, civil rights, women's rights, stand up for religious freedom, freedom of the press, the right of people to live and worship freely. Now, who will champion human rights and democracy, not only at home and around the world, but as Eleanor Roosevelt once said, in the small places close to home, the streets where people live, the schools they attend, the factories, farms, and offices where they work. Earlier this year, just about a month and a half ago, I spoke at the memorial service in New York for Edie Windsor, who was instrumental in the fight for marriage equality. Her lawyer, my friend, Roberta Kaplan, gave a beautiful eulogy, and she said something that day that really stuck with me that I want to share with all of you. No human being ever gets to complete the work of liberation. In other words, if we die or retire with a sense that our work is complete, then we know that we have not aimed high enough. We stand on the shoulders of generations who've come before, activists and advocates like Edie, or those at Stonewall, elected officials like Harvey Milk, who kicked down the closet door, everyone who risked their jobs, their homes, even their lives to fight for fundamental rights and dignity for all people, and everyone who continues the fight today. Jim Obergefell, who is here, a champion Parents like Judy and Dennis Shepard, the survivors and family members of loved ones lost at Pulse, trailblazers like Laverne Cox, leaders like my dear friend Chad Griffin, and countless individuals across America whose names we may never know, who are changing our country and the world through quiet acts of bravery. They're coming out, they're speaking up, they're resisting injustices large and small. So our work is not yet complete. What do we do now? There's really only one answer. We have to keep going. We have to support each other. We have to strive for that more perfect union. We have to build that brighter future that every child deserves. And we have to be willing to speak truth to power, whoever is on the receiving end. Now, I would have much preferred to have come to the dinner tonight from a slightly closer residence. But you know, yeah, there are still unanswered questions. I do the best I can in my book, What Happened. But it does strike me that in the last few days, at least Fox News seems to think that's where I live in the White House. Because they spend a disproportionate amount of their time talking about impeaching me. So look, if they want to make a trade, I'd be more than willing.